I quit. See, I had the dream job. I was making £60,000 a year out of uni. My parents were proud. My friends were impressed. I had a big shiny office and I'd moved into a lovely house in London with all of my best mates. I'd made it. But after just 8 months in that job, I realized that I had made a massive mistake. I realized that I was climbing on the wrong ladder. And if I didn't jump off, I'd look back in 20 years' time and regret my life. And so with no real backup plan and no real idea what I was going to do next, I quit. And in this video, I want to share the 3 reasons why I had to quit, because you might be watching this right now knowing that you're also on the wrong ladder, that dreading waking up on a Monday morning and going to work, feeling a lack of purpose and fulfillment, and while also making someone else rich is not necessarily a normal feeling, that there is an alternative and that right now you can choose a different path to the one you're on right now. See, it all started on my first day when I was walking into the office. I was excited because I'd worked so hard to get into this company and I'd been building up to my first day, my first moment of finally being welcomed into the company. And I looked around me, I looked to my left and my right, the people that I'd started with and the guest speakers up on stage. And I realized that I just couldn't relate to any of them. It was not that they were bad people at all, but it was so clear that we were such different people. I felt like the odd one out. And there was one specific example of a lack of fulfillment in the corporate world, which would always stick with me. Because in my first week, I was chatting to my friends about holidays, about time off, and he pulled up this spreadsheet, which basically gave a map of all the days off that he should take for his personal schedule to be able to spend as many days away from work as possible. It had clearly taken someone hours to make, and it also took him multiple attempts to make sure that he got the right system in place. And while he was showing this off to me, basically bragging about how many days off he was going to have this year, I remember thinking that is the exact opposite of the life that I want to live. I remember thinking I never ever want to be optimizing and gaming a system to spend as much time away from the life that I've built for myself. We work for about 70% of our lives. I want to be excited to do the thing that I'm doing, not thinking about how I can spend as many days away from it as possible. For me, the purpose of a job is a mission and it is fulfillment. And it is something that you wake up for, feeling a drive towards building. I realized that if I was trying to escape the very thing that I was doing for the majority of my life, and that thing was the wrong thing, and that I should go and find a purpose and a mission that makes me not want time off, that makes me not want to sit on a beach instead of doing it. And it just felt at that moment that the office that I was in was full of people who were trying to escape the life that they had built for themselves. And so I started dreading going into work, because it all comes down to a feeling when you open your eyes in the morning. What is that first feeling that you felt? And every single morning, all I felt was dread and regret of what I was actually going in to do. And I was once told that the biggest test that you can use to see if you're on the right trajectory, if you're in the right place, is to look at people a few years above you in the thing that you're doing. Do you want their life? Would you work day in, day out to get what they have? And the simple answer was no. The people a few years above me didn't look like they enjoyed their jobs. And this story sums it up, because I was talking to one of my managers about how much he enjoys the projects that he's on. And he said to me that he enjoys maybe 2 out of 10 of the projects he does, and the other 8 out of 10 you just have to kind of get on with. That blew my mind when he said that to me, because I could not imagine only ever enjoying 20% of the work that I actually do. And it's that lack of fulfillment, that lack of enjoyment of your job, which is the first reason that I decided to quit, because I realized that I was not giving up my life to spend 5 out of 7 days a week on something that I was most likely not going to enjoy and that I was going to dread actually waking up to. Yes, I had the nice salary. Yes, I had the prestigious corporate job, but I realized that if I didn't wake up and actually look forward to what I was doing every day, if I didn't have fulfillment and purpose in the work that I was doing, then I would simply burn out very quickly, or just look back in 20 years' time and regret what I'd done with that time. And on that project with the manager who said he enjoyed 20% of the projects, this one incident happened which literally made me want to quit in the moment. We were running a project with some people who were investing into another company, and that other company had been built from the ground upwards by a family, a group of entrepreneurs who had built a company that they really cared about. This company that we were working with had come in and they were wanting to invest in that company. And while we were working out how to grow that investing company, the investing company told us the story of what happened when they had bought the company that the family had grown. They said they'd gone into the office the day that they had bought the company, and they'd walked into the founder's office and they'd fired them all on the spot. They were laughing about how they hardly even gave them enough time to get their protein shaker out of the kitchen to go and leave the office, and they basically sent them running, and they were all laughing about it. And I remember sitting in that room, looking at everyone around me, laughing about that incident, and thinking I am in the wrong room. I'm in the room with the bad people, not the people who grow the businesses, the people who get fulfillment, the people who make real impact in people's lives. I'm in the room full of the people that are on the other side, the ones that care about wealth, the ones that care about prestige, the ones that are happy to put other people down in order to grow themselves. And by all means, I'm not saying the whole of my company was like that. It genuinely was a good company. But at that point, I realized that I wanted to be the person who felt fulfilled, who built a business from the ground up, not the other side, not the person who rips dreams away from people. And I started dreading going into work. For me, it all came down to that feeling when I first opened my eyes in the morning. Was I excited to what I had in front of me? No, I was dreading the thought of walking into work, to opening my laptop and interacting with the people I was working with. And the lack of choice over that feeling was what hurt the most. It was that I didn't have control over what I wanted to do. I didn't have the 4 Ws. I couldn't decide who I wanted to work with. I couldn't decide where I wanted to work. I couldn't decide on what time I wanted to work. And I couldn't decide on what things that I wanted to work on. I was under the control of someone else. And this came out to me so apparently when one of my great friends who lived on the other side of the world came to visit London. He 2 weeks in advance asked if I was free on this evening, and I booked out that evening in my calendar, told my manager and said, I really want to make sure I could meet my friend. And then as that day came and as that day progressed, what happened is my manager said, it's looking like it's going to be a busy night tonight, Sol. It's looking like we're going to have to work hard, even though I'd given him all this advance. And I was 2.5 hours late to see my friend because I was working on useless PowerPoint slides that no one was going to read anyway. And I was 2.5 hours late to see this guy who I was so looking forward to see, who had literally come from the other side of the world. I wanted to see him so badly, and I was instead working on useless PowerPoint slides. And that's when I realized I was under the control of someone else. I was under the control of someone who was dictating what I did with my time. And that is something that I never want to feel. I never want to feel like I don't have the choice of seeing a friend like that, to leave him waiting in a pub for 2.5 hours while I keep saying, oh, it'll be another 20 minutes, it'll be another 20 minutes, because I didn't have control over what I wanted to do. And the worst part about it is my manager was like, oh, we can go for dinner this evening to make up for it. I'm so sorry. And that is the problem that I found with these corporates, is they have all these perks, they have all these ideas of going away, getting free dinners, getting business class flights, but every single one of them is just to compensate you for the lack of control that you have over your own future, over your own destiny. And that is something that I came to realize after the novelty of the taxis and the hotels and the free food wore off. And I realized that I was just being brainwashed into thinking that I was getting all these perks that were actually just a cover for me trading my time and my freedom to make someone else rich. And while that was annoying, there was one story which made me hand in my resignation the next day. See, about halfway through 2024, I was put on a remote project where I was working only with people in the US, and therefore I could work from coffee shops and cafes around where I lived in London. Didn't need to go into the office because all of my team members were in the US. A few people I'd spoken to mentioned that Lisbon was amazing at that time of year, and therefore I decided that what I was going to do is, instead of working from remote coffee shops, I was actually going to rent an apartment in Lisbon and go and work remotely, which I assume would be absolutely fine, considering the fact that all I'd been doing was working remotely anyway. And I just messaged someone in the London office saying that I was going to do that. And I was met with a meeting saying there was no circumstance where I was allowed to go to Lisbon. While I don't blame any individuals, of course, it made me realize the lack of freedom that I actually had, that the company had control over my life. They could ultimately tell me where I needed to be in the world. And if they needed me to come into the office, they could also tell me when I needed to come in as well. It made me realize, and although there was no reason why I needed to be in London, and there's no reason why I need to be in the office because I'd not been there before, the kind of computer says no, corporate logic meant that there was no way that I could actually go and do something that I wanted to do. And I realized that as long as I was in this corporate world, I did not have the 4 Ws. I did not have freedom of doing what I wanted, when I wanted, where I wanted, and with who I wanted. And that Lisbon story frustrated me, and it made me realize that I didn't want to spend a single minute building a life where I didn't have the freedom that I wanted. Call me privileged and call me spoiled, but in my life, I want to have choice and I want to have freedom over what I do, all possible opportunities. And when someone tells me what what to do or where to be, it takes that freedom and that choice away from me. However, freedom is one thing, but I wanted to be able to build a life of choice for myself. Freedom is not living in Bali or living in Lisbon. Freedom is being able to choose when you move to Bali, when you fly back home to see people, when you move from Bali to Lisbon, or whether you go on that spontaneous ski trip. And all that freedom has to be facilitated by financial stability. I knew that in order to have the choice that I wanted in my life, I had to earn good amounts of money. I've always been money motivated, not to be able to buy Lamborghinis and nice watches, but to be able to have ultimate amounts of choice to whatever I do. And that brought me onto the third lesson, and the third reason that I quit was because I realized that being in a corporate job was not the best way to achieve the most amount of wealth possible. And it all came down to some of the people that I met in Bali 2.5 years ago, the year before I started my corporate job, and I learned what real financial success meant with one particular story. Because when I was in English university and I was 21 and 22, if someone said to me £60,000 a year, which is the corporate salary that I was going to be offered, I would have said, that is incredible amounts of money. That is more money than you ever need, or more money than you could ever want. And obviously it was. You can imagine £60,000 was incredible for a student. However, when I came out to Bali, I was having dinner. Someone was asking someone how their business doing and what their take home was, which again is a very normal conversation to have because people are very transparent about their money out here. And the person said 60,000. And I was like, oh, cool. That's kind of the same amount that I'm going to be earning in my corporate job. And they were like, that's an incredibly well-paid corporate job. And I went, what do you mean? And they said, £60,000 a month for a corporate job is incredible. And that's when I realized that we were playing on completely different levels. The people I was speaking to out here, whenever they said those figures, they meant per month. That person was actually earning 12 times more. They were earning my yearly corporate salary in just a single month. It blew my mind, and it made me consider, was I actually doing the right thing to achieve the financial success, to maximize the amount of choice that I want to have in my life? But it was actually only 6 months into this corporate job where I realized the lack of financial success that you could have in one of these companies. And it came down to when we did our end of year review. And if you've never seen one of these review systems in these big corporates, what happens is at the end of every 6 months or the end of every year, people have these internal review systems that decide whether they get promotions. You have to do feedback reviews, you have to get reviews by your managers, and it's this whole ecosystem that basically helps people work out who should rise to the next ranks or not. And I, after 6 months, got this big email telling me about this whole review process, about the tens of hours that I was going to need to put in to filling out all these documents and basically pitching the chance at getting a promotion. And obviously the idea of a promotion in itself is quite attractive. But then I looked at the pay increases that I would get if I got the best possible promotion available to me. It was £5,000 a year, which is about £300 extra per month into my bank account. And it was at that point where I realized that the corporate ladder was not where you can achieve financial wealth. Even promotions in 5 years' time, I could only gain about a 20% increase on my salary. And I realized that no matter how hard I worked, I was conformed to this system where someone was making money off my time. And I was not ever going to achieve real financial success being where I was. And all of that was contrasted to the people that I'd met out here in Bali in places like this who were making my annual corporate salary in just a month, who were buying sports cars, who were buying houses in their early 20s. And then I looked back at the situation I was in my corporate job and I asked myself, am I really on track for financial success? Am I building a financial wealth pool that is going to allow me to have choice and freedom over what I want to do? And the answer was no. Yes, you can make a bit of money rising the corporate ladder, but at the end of the day, the money that I'd seen these 20-year-olds in this different life making was the same money that 50 and 60-year-old partners at my company were making. And the managers a few years above me were still trading their time for money, working 70, 80-hour weeks, only for a few £1,000s more a year than me, a 24-year-old in that office. While I fully believe that money is not the be-all and end-all, it does give you choice. It gives you freedom to make the decisions that you want to make. And I didn't want to wait until I was retiring at 50 and 60 to be able to have that liberty, to be able to have that life. I wanted to build that life for myself as soon as possible. And I realized that the corporate ladder was not the way that I was going to achieve this life for myself. It was instead following the path of those 20-year-olds who are buying the supercars, who are buying the houses. And although that's not something that motivates me, I'm always interested as to how someone could could have been living a better life than me. And I realized that I needed to work out what these 20-year-olds were doing to be able to afford the same things that the 50 and 60-year-olds in my office were able to do. And now I'm here in Bali, living out my dream, working when I want, where I want, with who I want, and whatever I want. And I feel excited to wake up every single morning. And if that's something you're interested in, then you can watch the next video where I explain exactly how you can do the same.